Heinz is seeking to farm in an alternative way to what he views as a world in crisis, that is unbridled consumerism, environmental disasters, disconnected from nature. Humans attempt to solve problems with heavy artillery instead of seeking to understand the root causes of disharmony. And Heinz is strongly influenced by this biodynamic approach to see the farm as a closed system, as opposed to what it has become, which is kind of a factory system of outputs and that is causing water pollution and air pollution. He is strongly influenced by the Dr. W. Albrecht approach of mineral balancing, recognizing not only the total yield is important, but also the nutrient density of the food. And this includes healthy soil, healthy food, healthy people. So rather than attacking what is causing a root problem, such as pests, he believes that if minerals and nutrients in the soil are balanced properly, and a healthy soil biology, that the healthy soil biology will make minerals available and plants resilient. And then insects and diseases won't target plants that are resilient. He cares about the healing the land and healing bodies with nutritious food, in addition to growing nourishing food. And so with that, I would like to introduce Taka, and I will share a screen slide of Taka, not Taka, I'm sorry, Heinz.
Good evening to everybody. I'm the old generation, so I'm all new to that virtual world, and I do have to say I have not embraced it as of yet. So I'm not too sure what I should say now, if I should give you my short talk, or if you want to start differently.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at Next Produce and Nexa Produce, and why you started it, and go from there.
Well, I started Nexa Produce in 2000. I actually moved here in November of '99. In the season of 1999, I worked on a large industrial scale organic farm in Pennsylvania, and I was rather disillusioned by, well, be a good example. We grew 20 acres in tomatoes, and I do not think I ate more than 5 tomatoes all season. They were looking perfect, but there was just no flavor there. It was just not worthwhile eating. And I felt that it was time for me to see what I can do, how I can myself address what I saw as needed. And what I saw as needed was sort of basically growing food which are nourishing us again, and also how do we accomplish that without war mentality towards nature. And that sort of goes back, where do we see ourselves within that earth web? Are we the peak of creation, or are we a link within the chain? They all then goes back to philosophical questions. But Next Step Produce started as my attempt to grow food which nourishes us, and how can I do that without being at war? So that's my introduction here.
Now, I have a question for you, actually. We will save there will be a Q&A at the very end of both presentations, but I do have a few prepared questions for Heinz. Now, there's a difference between I've seen that you refer to what you do more as restorative agriculture versus regenerative. Do you view a difference between those two terms?
See, as time goes on, the words we use to express something changes. You know, it's like 20 years ago, we talked about sustainable farming, but then if somebody paid attention, you say, well, what are we sustaining? You know, are we at a point of we are able to sustain? To give you an example, let's say you buy land up in Alaska and nobody ever farmed on that land. You're on 8% organic matter. Then yes, we are able to sustain what is. But if you start out in southern Maryland and you had a 100-year history of growing tobacco, your organic matter is down to 1.5%. Your trace elements are mostly gone. You know, we are not at the point to talk sustaining. And like 15 years ago, people used the word restoration, and then only really recently the word regenerative came up. So there are tremendous overlaps, but if you probably go deep, there are some differences in the understanding of what each word means. So I'm, as such, may not call myself as a spokesperson of regenerative. I'm more a spokesperson of what I'm trying to do here, and that goes back to nourishing food in harmony with nature. That's, you know, that's who you're talking to, and not necessarily to the poster child of regenerative farming.
I don't know what it's talking about.
So that's it.
Heinz, can you tell us a few things about the things that you grow on your farm? And I noticed that there's been a progression of what you started growing, and then over time, you've grown different things depending on what you saw as the need or the change for the soil. Can you just give us a little background?
Well, it's you know, generally when you live or work or you know, run a business or run a farm, you shouldn't do something just for one reason. You know, you should have many different justification of what you do. Now, like we started out with vegetables. There's many reasons to start out with vegetables. On one side, your upfront capitalization is lower than anything else. Your work input is probably higher than anything else, but the work is your income. And then also the per acre return is way higher on vegetables than, let's say, on grains or on milk, for example. So, you know, it's like if you want to, you know, if you like to make a living, you know, selling milk, you may need 80 cows, and that then leads to a massive capitalization. Or if you want to make a living growing, you know, just soybeans for the glue market, you may need, well, what I was told, you may need $750,000 in used implements and almost 1,000 acres of land if your dream is to, you know, grow soybeans for ink and glue. So, you know, there's different reasons coming in, but then also, you know, for me, if I would like to play that self-employed game, what is my relationship to work? Is it just a means to make money, or is it part of one's self-identification? And I'm one who gets bored easily. So why would I set myself up to, you know, bunch kale 40 hours a week? It just, the intellectual stimulus is gone quite quickly. So so that leads to diversity, but also remember 20 years ago, the whole one understanding was aimed towards sustainability. Now, when I look out my office window and look around, I probably see 30, 40 different species of trees. Now, this bioregion is diverse by the amount of rainfall, etc. we have. So in that very moment, why then would I just grow soybeans? If we want to strive towards sustainability, we need to create a diversified system, which then also leads into the whole aspect of dignity in work and not being stuck with the same tasks for 40, 50, 60 hours a week. So it all, in the bigger sense, everything then comes together in a full circle. If you create a sustainable system, you need to do restoration or regenerative first. But if you then want to go to the end goal of sustainability, you need to have the diversity that leads to that, the challenging work. You're not stuck with the same thing, but that also leads to increasing the organic matter, which leads to increase of biological activity, which leads to increased nutrient density, which leads to which is also part of carbon sequestration, which then becomes part of saving the earth. It's all one big package, and taking one item out of that package is not helping us necessarily. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I'd like to hear a little bit more, I think, about the health of the soil and what you all do to ensure the health of your soil, of your crops. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about the Albrecht method that you employ.
We're getting technical here very fast, but with the health of the soil, doing a soil assessment here, on one side we are on flat ground, which leads to a suitability for tillage for row crops, but then we were also on 100-year-old tobacco ground, which meant restoration needs to happen first. So, and that is many things. It's from crop rotation to making sure that your ground is always covered, to finish compost, to applying rock dust for all the trace elements, which leads also to foliar feeding to increase your nutritional content of your plants, reduce tillage, the whole mineral balancing. And with the mineral balancing, there we sort of would have to understand a bit, something like 100 years ago, there's a German scientist by the name of Justus von Liebig who came up with that law of the minimum, and basically saying that the element which is least available is gives you the maximum yield. And then, like if you want to prove that phosphorus fertilizer really works, you look for a ground deficient in phosphorus fertilizer, and then there you have the best proof. But today we don't often ask what is there or where is it. Is it a foot down, is it 2 feet down, or just 6 inches? So we have sort of more that general approach. But Dr. Albrecht was one of the earlier ones who questioned that, law of the minimum approach and using nitrogen then as the fuel. Nitrogen gives you a very fast response, but it also leads to excessive plant growth, which leads to weakened cell walls, which leads to more disease-prone vegetables. Or what would be a good thing is, like in the Green Revolution, it was a heavy emphasis on using nitrogen, but then your all grain varieties just got too tall and then it just flopped over, which then became a pain in the neck to harvest. So the whole new breeding was to basically breed that plant to half or a third of its height. So you could pump it more with nitrogen, so you could increase your yields. And yes, yield increases were accomplished, but it also seemed like your nutrients just got diluted. So with other words, if you have the potential of X amount of nutrients per acre in 1,000 pounds, now you got the same nutrients in 2,000 pounds. And and when you start listening around, it's like you need to eat 5 apples now where you used to eat 1 apple to get the same nutrients. So Albrecht was the first one who talked about having your cation exchange capacity saturated in a certain percentage in calcium and magnesium, et cetera. He felt that the calcium was the fuel of the plant, and the Albrecht people are really the only one who talk about nutrient density in food. You cannot go to the extension office and they're talking to you about how to increase the protein level in your grain, for example. It's not part of their vocabulary. The language they use is bushels per acre, but not the quality. But it also leads, like, let's say you want to produce milk. If you produce milk for skim milk, you would have a black Holstein cow which had a huge amount of milk but very low in butter fat. But if you want to make cheese, you would have a Jersey cow which has less total gallons but actually more butter fat in what you can produce per year. So Albrecht was the first one who really addressed the issue of nutrient density.
I have one final question for you, and then I'd like to work to switch over to Taka. Do you view regenerative agriculture as scalable, and if so, how? Or how not? I'm curious to hear about your thoughts on scaling the processes of regenerative.
Anything is scalable. Like you have, let's say, organic farms, couple thousand acres in Australia. You have huge organic farms in the Midwest. For me, the question is more, how do we maintain the quality of work? Our life's purpose is not just to prove that Henry Ford in his, the simpler your tasks are, the quicker your learning curve, the more, the faster you make money for the company. It's more like, if we want to spend that, 80, 90 years on this earth, how do we do that in a meaningful way? And are we going to separate work and leisure time altogether? Or do we say, hey, work should be meaningful so we get satisfaction out of our work and don't have that need for that unbridled consumerism at the end of the day, because there's that huge void in us. Working in an assembly line, doing the same task 40, 50 hours a week is just no fun. And then why do we set up work for everybody that way? It just violates something in our spirit. So yes, it's scalable, but then the question is, how do we scale it and maintain the dignity in work? Or are we better off to have many small farms with people making their own independent decisions? And, yes, have some communal aspect there, but, I'm sort of a believer in a bunch of independent yeomans versus one huge, farm owned by Bill Gates, and the rest are just, semi-slaves.
That would be a really interesting vision for our future of Bill Gates' Microsoft farm.
Well, Bill Gates is the largest landowner now in the United States.
I did not know that. Well, thank you. Oh, yes, go ahead.
No, yes. So, but no, things are changing. But the constant, like we always was thinking about like Guatemala, that 1% of the population owns 90% of the wealth. America is not that much different anymore.
Wow.
It's just we just don't talk about it. It sort of crept up quietly to us, but it's not that much different.
Well, thank you for that presentation, and I think that that's a good lead up to our next speaker, Taka Kamezawa. I think you raised Heinz raised some interesting questions there at the end on in answering the question on scalability. So with that, I would like to introduce our next guest, Taka Kamezawa, who he is the Chief Relationships Officer at Trilogy since January 2020, with prior experience as a senior advisor. He has exceptional global connections with experiences of advising, managing, and investing in startups and growth stage companies, from ag tech to fintech companies. He's an accomplished global executive and a CFA charter holder with over 25 years of investment and project experiences at several multilateral development banks, including Asian Development Bank, International Finance Corporation, Inter-American Development Bank, and the World Bank. He has worked on private investments in over 50 countries. When he worked for these development banks, Taka became a partner of Next Impact Ventures to support promising startups. And so with that, I would like to welcome Taka. A little bit of back history. I know Taka through Bethesda Green, and he gives a very interesting talk on Trilogy. So I think you'll hear the other side of the same coin as we heard from Heinz. And with that, I'll let Taka take it away.
Good evening. So I'm trying to, can you see the screen? Everybody can see the screen, I guess.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm here
So-
for already. I'm busy for a while.
Just a moment. So I think it just to follow up on the presentation, just we heard talking about the scalable regenerative agriculture. I think the Trilogy is the ultimate scalable regenerative agriculture. So I don't know how many people know about microalgae, but microalgae is a small microorganism. Big sister or big brother is a kelp. So I would discuss more in detail, but we harvest microalgae called Chlorella vulgaris 50% 5 out of 7 days. And as you can see from my back, that's a 36 metric ton plant. So it just, and we produce the organic biofertilizer or soil amendment product. So I think we are the ultimate regenerative farms. So let me go through. So what I wanted to talk about today is global food system for 100 years. Here are 3 questions that I wanted to ask to everybody. Industrial agriculture, is it solution or problem? And I don't like the term fertilizers. Chemical fertilizers really fertile, nourishing the soil. And another thing is pesticide really killing the pest. I mean, I really wanted to ask this question. As you can see from this picture, it's a massive, land, monoculture using the machine, a lot of chemical fertilizer in order to feed the global population that was needed. But I don't think, but I think we are in a critical point where we need to think about the modern agriculture based on chemistry. So you can see from this chart, it's already the land is quite compromised. I mean, there are a lot of different statistics, but about 33% of global land is already degraded. And I think the trend seems to be continued to increase. So you can see the Argentina quite bad, Paraguay, Brazil, so this is a huge problem. We are losing the soil. So soil degradation, losing the soil. What is the problem? because if there's nothing, CO2 goes up, water goes up. But if it's covered with the crops, you know, the photosynthesis and others, we can absorb CO2, and also, you know, the soil can maintain the water better. So definitely, the soil degradation leading to climate change for the last 50 to 100 years. So why soil is so important? This is an infographic from the FAO. Soil is the foundation of nutrition for both plants and humans, both of us. So healthy soil has 18 macro and micronutrients, and we needed those. So actually, instead of using so much chemical fertilizer, actually nitrogen is in the soil, but the plant cannot absorb effectively without the healthy fungi community. You know, for example, magnesium is important for human health. We talk about COVID for immune health, and the magnesium for the plant is needed for photosynthesis and also to support the enzyme function of the soil. So I think one of the important elements of regenerative agriculture, why it is important is, if the plant doesn't get enough nutrients, 18 macro and micro, the one we consume we cannot get those nutrients. So this is really, really important. So what is the scale of change? There are a lot of statistics, but some reports said 2 billion people on this planet is some sort of macro or micro nutrient deficiency. So a lot of diseases coming from, like a previous speaker talk about it. We don't get enough, nutrient from the food we eat. So this is massive number. A lot of children are stunted. So it's a global problem. At the same time, 2 billion people has micronutrient deficiency, but 2 billion people has overweight issue. So it's a global issue, and I think we have to change this. Status quo is not sustainable. So here I wanted to pose the question: earthworm and strawberries. So our first customer for Trilogy is a strawberry farmer, conventional in Florida. And they asked us a question, how many years do you think that we haven't seen the earthworms? So we said 5 years, probably 10 years. No, actually it's over 60 years. Once they start using the chemical fertilizer, they haven't seen the earthworms. And another interesting anecdote is, for the strawberry farming, in the conventional farming, they use so much pesticide, fungicide. So strawberry farmers, they actually do not eat their strawberries. And there's also statistic where, people living closer to these strawberry farm conventional, they have a higher cases of cancer. So it's not very good. And how can we live? How can we eat the strawberry from the soil where there's no earthworms? So in the Florida soil, typically, organic matter is 1%, and their practices before each season, they kill everything, and they actually put the microbes and those injected in the soil, and it's just really shocking. And after the strawberry, they're going to do watermelon, and what they do is they still have some strawberry, but they kill off everything. They put the watermelon on it. So it's really dangerous practice that they're doing. So this is from the brown bag of the one of the organic farms. So here it says, it's very striking fact. 99.9% of pesticide is wasted. It's just this should not be the way that we do it. But what happened is, since the plant cannot get enough nutrients from the soil, they are weak, so they also cannot fight against these pests. So with a chemical, we come up with this, pesticide, but actually it's only 0.1%. It's actually kill the pest. Less in the soil, if rain comes, the waterfall, it goes to the sea, the water, damage the entire environment. So, for example, another factor, that the scientists find that lot of bee-killing nanonicotians is found in 75%, of honey samples. So I think we are exposed thanks to the modern chemical industry, chemical agriculture. We were consuming lots of chemical that we didn't take it 100 years ago. So I think that really affects our body. So I just wanted to explain a little bit about Trilogy, what we are doing. So what you see here on the screen is our 36 metric ton plant in Dover, Florida. So as I said, that we are producing 100% organic, OMRI certified biofertilizer, and then we can harvest 50% 5 days out of 7 days. So what we do is we're going to reduce this tube to 50%. We harvest, take out the product, and we put back the water. And the next day, the density of the chlorella is the level that we want. So it's highly scalable, regenerative agriculture that we are doing it. So what we do is our product works as an organic prebiotic for soil microbes. So we feed the microbes count, especially for mycorrhizal fungi count, increase it over 150%. So they constitute a part of the root system. So these mycorrhizal fungi and the plant root has 450 million years of give and take relationship. So fungi receive the carbon coming out of photosynthesis. Some people say taxing the plant by 30–40%. In return, these fungi get all of these macro and micronutrients from the soil and give it to the plant. So it's really, we are enhancing this 400 million years of give and take relationship with our biofertilizer. So we are really putting the life back to the soil. That's what we have been doing it. So I've already explained that we are addressing the problem. The dirt is tired. Florida farmers telling us the dirt on steroid, these NPK fertilizers. So we are trying to change that dynamics. So what we have so far realized it. So if they use a product every day during the season, we see the yield increase over 20%. And this is very important fact. Another one is we only tested at this moment a strawberry for Florida soil, but we have been able to reduce the chemical fertilizer usage by 75%, but still increase the yield by 8.9%. And we're going to do more testing for more fertile soil. Probably the farmer will not, they don't need to use any chemical fertilizers. And as I explained already, that we increase the soil fertility by increasing the beneficial fungi. So we see a lot of effects, include the root length, the plant is more resistant, and increasing water retention. And I will show you a little bit more video, but we extend the shelf life over 100%. So this is the graph shows that with our product, the healthy mycorrhizal spore count increases by 150%. And hope this works. I think this is a video showing the shelf life extension. So strawberry lasts another week or so in room temperature. And we have tested the similar effect for blueberry and other products. So I think this is my presentation.
Thank you, Thomet, for that presentation. That was excellent. I have a question for you, and I think that there are also a few questions that came in. Are you saying that so this technology can be used independently of any chemical fertilizer or with chemical fertilizer?
No. So at this moment, our main customer is the conventional farming. So they use it. They use their mix And if we add our product, they see this increase of increased yield, extension of shelf life. But also we have an organic customer as well.
And has this technology gotten like, if someone were to only use this technology, could they call the produce organic? Does this fall under that designation?
No, we are organic inputs, but if the practice is chemical fertilizer, they can't call it. And from the conventional farm to farming to organic, the lot of requirement, it usually takes 3 years.
Let me, Bill Westcott, he said, what about nitrogen emissions? But do you want to elaborate on that question, or do you want to? And I'm guessing that was in response to when you were talking about emissions of this process.
That's right. When you're talking about, you actually had a diagram there showing just carbon dioxide and water vapor emissions and talking about climate. Whereas, obviously one of the key aspects is nitrous oxide from agriculture. And I understand, as I heard the rest of the presentation, that's not necessarily a key focus of yours. But I'm wondering if you looked at that aspect of how your approach may address those emissions as well.
So if you use chemical fertilizer, I think you use a lot of nitrous oxide emissions. So we have not been able to do it if the farmer start to use a product and reduce the chemical fertilizer, it will have a significant impact. So the difficulty here is for the farmer, if they lose the season, they lose the season. It's hard. We have growing evidence and replace the chemical fertilizer, but it's not there. But we are talking to a lot of agrochemical, a lot of these large companies, and they see the trend that they can't continue like this by bombarding the soil with the chemicals. So I think it's eventually they will embrace a company like us and then start using the chemical fertilizer less. So that's the future trajectory, yeah, but it will take some time to get there.
Right, and plus that other aspect that you're talking about in terms of pesticides, a small percentage going to pests. Same thing with the fertilizer, little phosphorus and nitrogen actually going into the plants versus runoff and elsewhere in the environment. And especially I like the fact I grew up in Florida, so I'm very happy you're focusing on strawberries in Florida, low water table and so forth, and greater realization of health impacts actually because of nitrogen and phosphorus in the water, and that's going to be coming under greater regulation by the EPA now under the Biden administration. So that all like points in your favor. So that's great.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, despite COVID, we have a delegation of Florida yesterday visiting a plant. Their concern is a turf. So huge nitrogen runoff. They need a massive water as well. So we are doing actually the test for the turf. So what it does is it will reduce the need for nitrogen. And also since our biofertilizer increase the fungi community, also the roots, probably they need less water. So that's something that we would like to penetrate. Even for the Chesapeake Bay, nitrogen runoff is a huge problem, and I think we could be a solution.
And also, okay, so then this one's from Jim, who asks, why do you grow the algae in tubes?
So I don't know how many of you see the ExxonMobil commercial. The typical way of doing microalgae cultivation, all technology, the open raceway. So microalgae is the small microorganism. It's a food for everything. So if it's open raceway, many times the pond crashes. So there's a lot of quality problem, our competitors. So we use a photobioreactor, and also we have our own patent process, which is approved, that we clean the water completely. So that's why we can cultivate 50% 5 out of 7 days. Actually, we can do it every single day, but with a crowd, sometimes productivity is not that great, so we usually say 5 out of 7 days.
And I think I want to understand a little bit, you know, what is the, so when you treat the soil with this technology, how long is the soil nourished or protected?
That one, we are still third year in the company, so we really have to test it. So usually the healthy soil, 1 tablespoon of soil has billion microbes. And the product is actually a collection of phytohormones. So these phytohormones feed the microbes. So that's how it works. So as you can see, back of my screen, it's green, but our biofertilizer product doesn't have any biomass in it. We filter out completely. It's actually the water. And how regenerative it is we have a 1 liter, then we dilute it 250 times. Still has an effect. So what is alarming is one farmer in California, they are dripping the actual fungi, mycorrhizae fungi, and with our product, since we feed the mycorrhizae fungi, we see the yield increase of 50%. It's just incredible. So if it reflects a healthy soil or healthy microbiome in the soil, it's really going to support the plant and plant growth. So what it does is, this is the cutting edge biology. So I see some of the questions, how it leads to longer shelf life. So we are doing very advanced, sophisticated analysis where our product feed the fungi community and how that one extend the shelf. So it could be a higher calcium intake. So we are exploring those. So this is really, cutting edge science that we are working on it.
I have 2 questions I see here. I'm not sure that I can fully read the first one, so I'll read Bill's. Have you looked at the sugar sector in Florida? This could be interesting. CO2 capture opportunities for the sugar refineries to grow in microalgae in addition to the core benefits.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's huge, but they're in an open sort of environment, right? So it might not be work. We haven't tested yet.
Janine asks, does extending the shelf life affect the nutrient density that Heinz was talking about?
So we haven't done the testing, so we're going to explore it. But one thing that we know is the strawberry gets sweeter. So a Brix index improves. But by theory, I think it should, because it's the beneficial fungi count increases 150%. They should be able to absorb more nutrients to the plant. So, and also, since our product is very small, micron level, either for irrigation or we can do a foliar application as well.
And there's a question here from Jason and Nabila. Maybe it's on Algae Blooms, but maybe perhaps you'd want to ask yourself.
Laura, which one? I'm Jason. I have the long question. I'm the architect.
Are you the one with the question on Algae Blooms?
No, I'm the one. I don't know where I fall in. I'm right above hers.
Okay, sorry. Why don't you go, since you're here right now, and then.
Yeah, so again, this is going to be very, very nuanced and specific to my profession. But what I'm looking at, a lot of my research is about how building systems can be have biodynamic living systems as integrated into the facade or the roof. I mean, you probably are very familiar with green roofs. They're becoming more and more popular. But one aspect to that is that if you can actually, if it makes sense to scale down rather than scale up regenerative farming principles at the building scale, so that they have probably more of like a community garden component to them, and they actually produce the food for perhaps the restaurants in the building and or restaurants in the area, or even to the local community if it's a high density area. And then whether even some of the algae technology can be applied, if that is required to be in a contained environment that's conditioned, or whether it can be exterior based and it can actually be integrated into a building system. So the building is producing the nutrients that then could act as the feed for the growing medium within the roofscape for the plants. So it's not like creating like a localized closed loop system of regenerative farming.
That excellent question. Actually, we've been asked to a lot of indoor farming companies from here in the US and also Europe. And we are developing much smaller units so that it can be integrated to individual farms or small urban garden. Technologically, it's possible.
Mm-hmm. So it could be scaled down.
Yes, definitely possible. For example, my dream project is small unit of ours per golf course. We can do that definitely. But at this moment, huge industrial scale. I think one of the largest in the country, and in terms of quality, probably the best microalgae that we are cultivating. For gathering investors, we need those big systems. But when we started as a startup, we had a small unit, and actually we are going to do a joint research with one of the largest pharmaceutical company in Japan, and we're going to do a lab unit. That's what.
Have you been approached by anybody who does community work where food deserts are an issue?
Oh, no,
and that they're trying to integrate more of a localized awareness to this process of growing your own food and having immediate access to healthy food?
Oh no, not yet. We would love to do it.
Yeah, right.
We would love to do it. So just connect me and
we have to build partnerships with architects so that we can make it happen.
Yeah, those things. So I mean, for example, we already entered to agreement with very sophisticated indoor farming in Europe. I cannot disclose a name, and that they basically do not use human hand at all, and they love our product and they are testing it. So and our working theory is, because this is really, I'm an investor, so don't ask me very detailed questions. But our working theory is our phytohormone works for soil microbe directly, and also directly to the plant itself. So some of the large-scale indoor farming, they use aeroponic. We think it's going to work. We already proved in hydroponics. So hopefully, our things will work for aeroponics. But that's the technology.
And Nabila, are you here? Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, please. Thank you. With regard to like just natural ponds and lakes or just freshwater places where sometimes the algae builds up, could that be used as part of your algae supply, or does it need to be created in your lab or your own personal settings that you currently have?
So some of the company, I know one in Maryland, they use a open pond or naturally coming microalgae to produce oil. So that's one way, but at this moment, those businesses are not viable because its oil price is not high enough. And I think in order to maintain the purity of microalgae and the quality, we have to use this closed end loop system, because it's really important to achieve this productivity. As I said, that we clean the water completely into the tube, and there is no contamination. And then even the tube size is important, so that the sunlight penetrates effectively, and then we achieve this 50% harvest ratio 5 out of 7 days. So that's very important. And I don't know how many of you knows about microalgae sector, but a lot of microalgae company enter into this business for biofuel. So there were a lot of interest. So their process is very complicated downstream. but our product, our technology at this moment is geared towards using the water to cultivate. So it's rather simple but elegant system. So production cost is very low. So even for agriculture, we can make money. So that's the technology. And I think our product is unique in the world. There's nobody else having this product.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's one more question, and I think you might have touched on it by talking about hydroponics, but most indoor ag tech and / vertical farming is soilless. So how do you use true algae? Again, I think it goes back to like the water from this process. Is that what you're referring to? Like, what does true algae work with vertical farming? And
yes. We have a result for increased yield over double digit for hydroponic situation. So just to explain everybody, this technology has been 10 years in the making, 7 years in US and 3 years in here in the USA. So, and we are on the cusp of a major growth at this moment. And if I may, I just wanted to take this opportunity. We're going to make a presentation through Bethesda Green on March 22nd from 3 p.m. So if you are interested, we bring our expert to this and talk about the company because we are currently fundraising as any startup does. So please, more than welcome to attend.
Okay, well, I think that actually brings us perfectly to 7 o'clock. And I want to say thank you again to both Heinz and to Taka for talking to us today about regenerative agriculture and hearing both of your approaches and takes into that. Thank you very much to our speakers. And we are going to head now into our circular economy working group meeting, and I invite Taka and Heinz to stay on. We just delve a little bit more into circular economy work, but this was a really fascinating topic. I've heard Taka speak before, and so I really like hearing about this technology, and I think it's really fascinating. And yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Heinz, also as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a daughter's concert, so I have to leave.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. All right. Hello. Okay. All right. Well, okay. So now we're going to move into the into our meeting, and I encourage everyone to stay. Basically,